Hey, it's Matt. I'm back with another transparent watercolor. This time it's a 7 by 10 inch painting of a red-bellied woodpecker. I got photos of this guy as he was coming to a log that I'd hollowed out and filled with suet in our backyard. I was able to get some good photos with a 400mm lens from the kitchen window. So I started the painting by a wash of blue on dry paper, and then I started charging in some greens. I left the top of the page alone so those colors would mix and be really soft, and then I started putting in some other paint, mixing it on the paper so I'd have some intentional backgrounds. So you can see on the right I have 3 different pre-mixed greens. One's kind of orangish, and then I have a dark and a light green. And as I put those in, hopefully they'd mix on the paper and cause some sharp edges where the different colors would run into each other, and that would simulate the leaves. And leave it soft at the top so it would have a little blurry background. I was bringing in some oranges, and the thought with that was that eventually the bird's going to have the bright red head, and so this will bring in some of those warm colors into the background, so it won't be as shockingly red. It'll match better with the greens in the background if I had some of those orangey red colors in with those. And you can see I'm adding some smaller details in with, I think that's a number 4 round brush. When I was happy with the background, I just peeled off the liquid frisket, revealing the white of the paper. And after that, I transferred the rest of the sketch using tracing paper, so I'd have something good to work from. As usual, I started painting in the local colors, and trying to cover up as much of the paper as possible. So for the back, where it's fairly much a black and white bird, I could I could go dark pretty quickly and establish those tones. Whereas the cherry tree I did in a couple of passes and had to stay pretty light. You can see on the left that my photo reference, that the main one that I was working from was a female bird, and I decided to paint a male. And not that the females aren't pretty, they're really pretty, but I love painting red, and so I thought it'd be fun to paint a little more of that red. So it turned into a male bird. To get the cherry bark, I did this in many light glazes to build up the color, and I was trying to balance out the tones of that. Was kind of fun to work on, because you want it to read as kind of the right color, but at times you would get a little bit colder because you've been using a lot of blues, and at other points you'd want to warm it up so it would still look woody and the correct color. So most of this was being done with a number 4 round. The initial wash over the trunk was done with, I think, a number 6 round. And now that I had the main base of the colors all down, and I got rid of the white of the paper, it's going to be easier to balance all those colors together. And in this pose, I wanted to emphasize a little bit of that pink on the belly. That you can see that in the photo reference too. That they call them red-bellied woodpeckers. It's really kind of a lousy name, because it's not really red; it's really pink. And then you almost never see the pink in the field. It's usually squashed up against the tree trunk. So that was one of the goals with this painting, was to show that. You can see here I was painting the feet and the eyes and the little details with the magnifier, just to get those areas with more detail. And I was trying to warm up the trunk, the branch that it was on. At first was a little cold temperature-wise, and I wanted to warm that up so it would match the bird a little bit better. And the flaky, I used to call it the potato chip bark of the black cherry, is a challenge to paint because it has so much texture on there, but it was kind of fun. And using the typical watercolor approach of working, you know, light to dark definitely is the way to go, and working transparent to opaque. So mixing your paints at first with light, you know, light glazes, and then eventually bringing in those darker tones definitely works best. And you can see that I'm still from the palette on the right, I'm still working pretty transparently. Getting all those little tiny feathers on the tail area here could be a challenge, because in reality you have these little layers of white and black kind of overlapping each other. Getting that to look right can be tough, but I find that if I do that in many layers, that tends to look more accurate and give the illusion of the feathers overlapping each other. And typically when I work on these, I'll work a little on the bird, work a little on the branch, and try to keep an even level of detail throughout, you know, much of the foreground elements. At other times I'll let some places fade off and have less detail, but in this case it's all kind of in the same focal plane, so I wanted to have an equal amount of detail. And again, I'm back to the magnifier to get the tiny little feathers. When working the reds, I often bring in a lot of orange for the highlight areas, and then fade to, you know, cooler reds as I work off into the shadows. So I'll use alizarin for the edges and some dioxazine purples for the shadow areas. That tends to work well for me. And here you can see I'm just picking and putting little shadows on the whites of the back. The blacks were pretty established, but I needed to get a little bit more shadow to show the edges of those feathers. Late in the painting, I'm pretty much just picking out tiny little details to put in. I'm doing almost all of this with the sharp number 2 round brush. And at this point I was bringing the red a little bit more forward into the head. After looking at some photo reference, I thought it needed a little bit more. So the finishing touches. If you get a chance, have a peek at the blog and the website, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment.